every dollar and holding states accountable. Roughly 78 million Americans are Medicaid recipients. Federal law makes the program available for citizens and certain immigrants with legal status. Another Republican-led state adopts new House districts, Ohio. Meanwhile, Virginia's Democrat lawmakers advance their own plans for redistricting. NTD's Arlene Richards has the details.
Ohio Republicans.
And at this moment, every single one of us has a choice to make, whether we stand for freedom or we're just going to fall for everything else.
Kirk told students they were living through what she called a battle for the soul of a generation, urging them to speak out about their beliefs and not give in to fear.
You can't change a nation if you're enslaved to fear. And you can't call out corruption if you're still chained to comfort. And you can't stand for truth if you first do not kneel before the Lord.
She said her husband's assassination strengthened her faith and urged students to contemplate on why their rights were so precious.
And Charlie would say this all the time. Your rights don't come from the government, they come from God. And he knew what every founding father knew, and nearly almost every university has forgotten, that you cannot have freedom without virtue, and you cannot have virtue without God.
Vice President J.D. Vance followed with a speech that makes personal tribute with political conviction, recalling the phone call he received the day Charlie Kirk was shot.
And I remember thinking, what a terrible tragedy for that family. And the second thing that I thought was, what a terrible tragedy for the United States of America.
Vance praised Kirk as one of the most influential voices of his generation and repeated what he said was Kirk's most important advice to students.
Charlie wanted you, more than anything, to invest in the things that were worth having, to build a life that was worth building. And that started, the most important advice he ever gave you was fall in love, get married, and start a family. And I can't honor Charlie without repeating that most important advice.
Vance also reiterated why the conservative movement is so adamant about defending freedom of speech.
And that's why, my friends, that's why we care so much about free speech. As Charlie lived and died for the basic principle that we ought to be able to talk about our differences, we ought to be able to debate them, and we ought to have faith that the best way to make sure that the best idea wins is to actually just have a discussion.
The night ended with a call to action for students to take leadership in their communities and in the nation Charlie Kirk helped shape.
If you care about this country, love it enough to get involved in the process and how we govern it. That is the only way we are going to save the United States of America, and that is perhaps the greatest contribution that you can make to Charlie Kirk's legacy is getting involved in saving this country. I'm in the fight, and I know every single one of you are with me. God bless you, and thank you for having me.
The Turning Point USA spokesperson said on X that more than half the student body of Ole Miss registered for the event, around 14,000 people. According to chapter president Lackman, the organization's decision to hold an event here shows that the University of Mississippi is at the forefront of Charlie Kirk's movement.
You know, you were probably one of the closest people to Charlie in the news media. You were a weekly guest on the show, at least for the last 5 or 6 months before Charlie's passing, I would say. I think it was something like that. But you, for the life of the show, you came on regularly. Mm-hmm. You're also the editor-in-chief of Breitbart. You've been a friend for years. You've spoken at the events. The floor is yours. This is a reality Blake and I have been navigating day in, day out, looking at that chair, being in this studio, like you said, just missing our friend, missing a leader of the country, leader of the conservative movement. And yet we also understand that Charlie would want us to keep doing this, and he'd want us to keep taking care of Turning Point and keep wanting us to march forward and support Erica in any way we can. But this is, like you said, this is your first time kind of coming back to the show and being around this. And so I want to give you the opportunity just to kind of reflect on what these last 6-7 weeks, what are we at now, have meant to you.
Well, first of all, I'm just really so pleased with how people took so many of Charlie's lessons to heart and people making a wholesale change in their life because Charlie inspired them. I think, Andrew, you and I even talked about this briefly privately about how we knew Charlie was huge, but it's hard to picture visuals in Croatia or whatever we were seeing, after he passed, which is amazing. And also, of course, the connection to his faith is so big, how just the marrying of faith and politics is so overdue in this country. The godlessness has just gotten way out of control. That's a huge lasting legacy of Charlie. But apropos of what we're doing today on the show, he really became a journalist, which I would never say to his face because that would have been an insult I would never wish on my worst enemies. But it is something that the show became a place where thought leaders and political leaders and spiritual leaders would come to get the message out because they knew it was one of the best places to get the message out. And I just found that amazing that of all the things he was doing, he was also a force in journalism, not just activism and social media and the campus tours. And I thought about why, and of course the work ethic comes first to mind, but how he would hone the arguments down to a point. He would just get it so that every single point, not only did he have all this knowledge and wisdom, but the knowledge part in particular, he had so much to say and he had so much history to back it up, so much data to back it up. But then the focusing, and South Park tried to make fun of him for it, but it wasn't effective at making fun of him. Like, he would focus the arguments. And that's how you convince people who are completely new. You might only have an elevator pitch. You might only have a second or two with them. Sell me this in a sentence or two. Charlie was the best I've ever seen at that. And he really had that focus. And I hope that's something that as the show continues and those of us who follow in Charlie's footsteps and worked alongside him, I hope we all challenge ourselves to get better at that so that we can make our points crisp and precise. So we've got the data, we got the info so that people can take that and use it to grow his movement and his vision.
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation, especially when you think about the South Park parody of Charlie and how we were watching and we're like, wow, they actually got that one pretty right because he had gotten some of the arguments down to such a distilled, powerful, formula that even when they were parodying the arguments on campus, Charlie had succeeded in making them ubiquitous. Yeah. They've become cultural and almost memeable, right? And that was Charlie's power of taking pretty lofty ideas. We think of politics as being lofty, and he would make it so digestible for the common man. And you come from, the world of DC and the think tank world, and everyone wants to prove how brilliant they are, and so they make these white papers. And Charlie was like, "We're not a think tank; we're a battle tank." Mm-hmm. And you saw that up close because
did he ever? Did he say that? That sounds like something he would say.
Yeah, no, like he said, Turning Point is not a think tank; we're a battle tank.
Yeah.
He, at least early on, he used to say that a lot. I don't know
it works. It very much is true.
It is true.
There was a certain humbleness to the fact that he would feel like people weren't going to give him a half an hour, and he could entertain you for half an hour and teach you stuff for half an hour. You could do the 3-hour podcast. No, but he said, I might only have you for 70 seconds. I might only have you for 20 seconds. And there was something that I thought was really, even though he was a big star, that was something that I thought was very populist of him, that I'm not expecting you to give me your whole afternoon to hear all the things I've ever done. Let me make one great point to you. And I love that approach because that's something that everyone's got time to hear one great point. You can just throw it right at him. And that was one thing I've been thinking about a lot where he really was the best at. And I hope that people take that to heart in their personal lives.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's really well said. And yeah, we do attempt to continue on his legacy. But yeah, this is a sacred duty that we have, both on the Turning Point side and here on the show, to sort of be that drumbeat, invite the thought leaders like yourself, be the tip of the spear, and get that messaging out there time and again. And I am really excited about today's show. Actually, we're coming up, we're about a minute out from a break, but I will tease it while we still have this time, and that is the real victims of 9/11. Alex, we all know that it's Zohran Mamdani's aunt. Of course, that she suffered this excruciating Islamophobia in the wake of the Twin Towers coming down. The victims were not the 2,977 New Yorkers and folks in the first responders and the people in the Twin Towers that died. No, those were not the real victims. it was Islamophobia that caused the real victims after 9/11. And the reason I'm excited to talk about this is because this was and we've said it before in the show, that one of the final, like, big focusing, like, through lines of the last couple of months of Charlie's life was he was raising the alarm bell about the influx and the Islamification of the Western world. He had traveled to the UK. Blake was on that trip, so was Mikey. They traveled to the UK. They'd seen what it looks like when a major major world city becomes so inundated. And it was terrifying, I think, for Charlie. It really left an impression, and he would not stop talking about what he saw, and he was warning about it. So we have a commercial break. 5 seconds more with Alex Marlowe and Blake Neff. We'll be right back at the Charlie Kirk Show this weekend. So I want to start with, I think, the most egregious, and that is him invoking Islamophobia after 9/11 and talking about who the real victims were. Play cut 55.
I want to use this moment to speak to the Muslims of New York City. I want to speak to the memory of my aunt. Who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab.
Yeah, I have a few things to say about that. So first of all, it's not confirmed, but some people have looked into his alleged aunts. And so first, he's from like a mixed background. So I think I don't know if we have the image of it, but he appears to only have one known aunt on his paternal side, which is the one with an Islamic background. And she was living in Tanzania when 9/11 happened, and there are no photos of her wearing a hijab. So this may all be quite exaggerated or possibly even made up, though. We must prepare ourselves. We're going to inevitably get the the swoop, and where they'll say, actually, in the Indo-Ugandan community, aunt is just used as a term of respect for any older woman who's looking for. Yeah, they do that crap. So we're dealing with that. But two, it's also just fake. Like, so some people have reacted and said, like, oh, boo-hoo, people didn't like Muslims much after, they murdered 3,000 Americans for no reason. But the more galling thing is it's just the complete opposite of reality. You can look at the polls, or you could just remember it if you're old enough, like me or you guys, to remember all of that we got this giant charm offensive towards Islam. Bush came out and he said, this is not Islam that did this. Islam is a religion of peace, even though Muhammad was not a man of peace, and in fact repeatedly urged his followers to take sex slaves from enemy populations. But we can talk about that later. And so you can look at Pew Research. They asked, like, do you have a favorable opinion of Islam after 9/11? And it went, who went up the most in how positively they viewed Islam after 9/11? Conservative Republicans. They went from 35% favorability to 64% favorability, higher than everyone except liberal Democrats. Everyone went up in how they viewed them. And then, of course, we went and we spent $2 trillion nation building. We let in millions of immigrants from the Middle East. We continue to do this. I think we let in 250,000 Afghans after that war ended. And so we basically went all out to welcome tons of Muslims. Vast majority of them are not really contributing that much to America, in my opinion. A very disproportionate share of Somalis, Afghans, and so on are just on the dole, effectively. And then this slime ball is coming out, and he's guilt-tripping us because he says his aunt felt uncomfortable wearing a hijab on the subway. Now, that didn't actually happen to her, unlike, the 3,000 people who got blown up on 9/11. And then he's coming in and he's saying, oh, my campaign platform is we need to up taxes on white neighborhoods so we can funnel more money to, like, my ethnic compatriots, which is what he's running on. He literally says, tax white neighborhoods more. That is what he says. It's just so despicable.
Can we hear the clip again? There's a part I want to point out, which is kind of unbelievable.
Yeah, 55. Go ahead and throw it up.
I want to use this moment to speak to the Muslims of New York City. I want to speak to the memory of my aunt. Who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab.
Say it again, just in case they couldn't hear you.
There was that huge pause there, and you think he's going to say, my aunt was on one of the planes.
Yep.
But instead he says, no, she couldn't take the bus after. Because the real bad guys here...
And not because anything happened.
No.
She felt uncomfortable. Maybe people looked at her weird.
Perfect point. It's not like she also got stabbed on the bus or she got an evil eye on the bus. No, she felt nervous about being on the bus.
I can think of a lot of people who feel uncomfortable in various Western countries going on the bus or on the train. I wonder, compared to 20 years ago. I feel like something happened.
Okay, three white guys here. How many of
that
you
makes people less likely to do that?
How many of us are taking the bus first? Like that's our first mode of public transportation if we go to New York.
Nope.
I don't think I've ever taken a bus in New York. I've been there 50 times. Like I'm taking something else other than the bus. And the thought here is not just who the victims are, which obviously he's saying the victims are the Muslims. Who are the bad guys? New Yorkers.
Americans.
New Yorkers are the oppressors in this scenario.
It's not really New Yorkers. Let's be honest. What he's really saying is somebody who looks like Daniel Penny.
Yeah.
Those are the bad guys.
White
really
New Yorkers.
And this is the whole shtick. I actually put out a tweet this weekend. Like he's playing the victim like a good little communist is trained to do.
Yeah.
Because what they do is they're going to weaponize grievance politics in order to say the oppressors deserve all that's coming for them. And it feels like this is a mask-off moment for Mamdani because he's so ahead in the polls now. He is, I mean, all credit where it's due. He is the most talented politician running for New York City mayor. There's not a question. And he's arguably the leader of the Democrat Party nationally, I would say. And he's a good talker.
Democratic
He's got a good
Socialist
line of BS,
Party.
as President Trump likes to say. And so more on this because this really is the big story. We'll be right back.
We're talking right now about the polls say that the left just doesn't like America a lot. And you were showing me another chart, Danny, that in addition to the partisan gap, there's also and this isn't surprising, a very severe generation gap in how people view America. I'm a millennial. I'm an aged millennial. You are a member of Gen Z. You were on a college campus quite recently.
Yeah.
What was your experience seeing this attitude towards America, especially on the left, but even on the right, I'd say?
It's very toxic on both sides right now. We'd be tabling and people would try and flip our table. Have you seen clips like that elsewhere? Just screaming at us, telling us to die and stuff like that. So just very vile stuff. And it increased all 4 years I was there. I saw more and more and more of it. And especially because this last year I was there was the election year. So it was obviously very intensified. But yeah, it keeps going more and more.
And was it specifically, though, because obviously we've always had political divisions in America. We had political divisions when both sides did genuinely love the country. What's standing out is I do feel there's this attitude on the left that America is a country to be punished now, not a country. I feel like the left at least used to have a good PR pitch of this will make everything in America better. Whereas now, Mamdani's platform is we're going to soak white neighborhoods, for example, because that just means bad. White equals bad. And I think to some extent for the left, native-born American also equals bad. And did you see that on campus?
Yeah, very anti-white. I'd heard stories of people in classes having to apologize for being white.
Really?
Like that, writing essays, completely like apologize for your white privilege, things like that. I had a friend who wants to be a teacher, and he has to all the time in classes write about why it's a problem that he's white, and this is who they want. They're teaching this to people who want to be teachers that are going to be teaching our next generation.
It's very bad for the country, but I also have to say I'm a little optimistic in that in the long run it is not good for a party to just so visibly despise it. People want to like the country they live in. That is an advantage we have. Ultimately, people want to love their home, and that's a thing that's happening over time. We saw it in this last election. Like Hispanics that Democrats assumed would just always be in their court are actually siding against them because they didn't love the endless flood of legals. They didn't love the idea of blowing up America. So I'm hopeful on that front, and that's why I want to loop in Cliff Maloney here, because we'll be talking about the elections in Virginia and New Jersey up ahead. But I just wanted to welcome him in. I believe he's been listening to what we've been talking about here. And Cliff, do you feel that that's giving us a shot, that the left's so visible, their visible distaste for America as a country is giving us an opening to really defend our mandate in these coming races?
Yeah, and Blake, listen, I've said this to you before on the show. I've said it plenty of times. I always thought that on November 5th, November 6th of last year, the day after the election, I just assumed the pendulum would have to swing, that the left would realize that this radical woke agenda of siding with illegals over American citizens, of pushing men to be in girls' sports, girls' bathrooms, and girls' spaces, I just assumed that they would figure it out and that they would say, look, we've got We've got to find a different path. But somehow the radicals, the activists, the 10% of the radical donors, the 10% of the radical activists, they're driving this party. They have no leader. They have no vision. They offer no solutions. And it's an opening for Republicans because we're at least coming to the table saying, listen, we care about blue-collar Americans. We care about bringing inflation down. We care about peace around the world.
That's all they care about, burning the American flag.
Violence. And so is this an opening? Absolutely. And I think you're going to see it. We'll talk about some of the numbers here in New Jersey and PA and Virginia, but we're seeing it live in the field that people are moving towards the Republicans, especially independents, because of this opening from the radical Democrats doubling down.
Yeah, the B-roll we're showing there is showing people, of course, burning the American flag. And I remember that's one of the last, debates we had on Thought Crime before we lost Charlie, and it was whether flag burning should be illegal or not. And I believe one of the points I brought up, maybe it was Charlie, one of us, I think it came up, though, that free speech issues aside, the grossness of burning the American flag aside, it kind of is really useful if your opponents are just able to, if they're able to just burn the flag, because it's so gross to look at that they do that when it's allowing your opponent to hurt themselves when you allow them to just go out and just say, yeah, I hate America. I want to burn America's symbols. I want to burn down America itself, rip down its statues, destroy the founders. And I think it's so funny that this Noah Smith guy has come out and he's like, guys, can we change that? Can we love America now? And it's such a centrist technocrat thing to believe that you can do that, to think, oh, I can just tell everyone we have to love America again and it will happen. No, you guys broke it. You messed it up. If they go up and say we love America now, the crowd is going to boo. And that's giving us a lot of hope in these races, which is what we're talking about in the next segment. Email us, freedom@charliekirk.
I'm Elmer.
All right. Well, as we were saying, the clear derision for this country that the Democrat Party has is creating political openings for us. And we have Cliff Maloney with us here. He's in Pennsylvania, which is a state that borders New Jersey. Now, New Jersey's been a blue state my entire life, but it was surprisingly close this last election. It has a lot of sort of MAGA-inclined people, and, it's elected Republican governors before, and we're hoping it's going to elect one again. Just to give you the latest rundown in the polls, we have Mickey Sherrill as the Democrat in the latest poll, and she was polling at 49% to 46% for the Republican Jack Ciattarelli. Now, that's a deficit, but it's closed up a lot in the last few weeks. We also have a very interesting poll that we've seen. Let's put up 225 there, where when they asked people, who do you think most of your neighbors or friends are voting for, then Ciattarelli got ahead 53% to 47%. So we want to go over to you, Cliff. You're actually on the ground there whipping votes. What does the evidence say? And also, what does the evidence you've seen with your own eyes say?
So to me, what we're seeing on the ground is there's energy for Jack. And, Mikey Sherrill is just the type of candidate that she's the Kamala Harris of New Jersey. The more time people spend with her, the more time people hear her or understand what ideas she's promoting, the fewer votes she's going to get. So I think we're in a great spot. I think the polling shows that. Blake, if you're all right with it, I'd love to kind of go through some of the data on the requests. And
no, 100%. Give that to us, for sure.
Yeah. So I've got it up here. Let me give you the rub. I just tweeted this out, and I do think that this is the entire election. 180,000 Republican voters, registered Republican voters, have requested a mail-in ballot in New Jersey. And out of them, only 104 have returned them. That means, and this is for the whole RAV and the whole Charlie Kirk Show audience, there are 80,000 Republicans right now in the state of New Jersey that have a ballot sitting on their dining room table. We've got to get every single one of them back. That's what we're doing at the New Jersey Chase with our program, njchase.com. If folks want to come knock doors with us or sponsor a ballot chaser, $175 a day. This is the election. Yes, we've got to early vote. Yes, we got to have people turn out. But if you look at that tweet on the screen, that is everything. Once again, the numbers, 184,000 requested them, 104 have come back. That's roughly 80,000 Republicans with a ballot sitting on their dining room table in New Jersey. That is the election. We've got to close that gap. anyone you know in New Jersey, make sure if they have a ballot, they send it back, make a plan to early vote, and if not, make sure they show up.
Democrats have touted one of the biggest victims in this shutdown allegedly is that early retirees are paying more for, I think, their health insurance premiums under Obamacare. And it filled me with dread that is apparently a politically powerful argument, because I don't want to say anything, to those who are out there who support us, who are early retirees, who were financially successful enough to do that. Good for you. But I'm just going to say it. It is not early retirees in America that our priority should be on. Our priority needs, above all, to be on young people who will have the next generation, who need to perpetuate American prosperity, American success, American vitality. And I do think as Republicans, we've got to be really zeroed in on that message that we are the people who care about your future. We are the ones who will do things to enable you to own a home, to have a family, to live in a country that doesn't feel like it hates you all of the time. And we've gone to this again and again. The fact that Democrats so visibly want you to live in filth and in crime and surrounded by foreigners who don't speak like you, who don't like you, who view you as a giant pile of money to get, they're creating a lot of opportunities for us. And we've at times been imperfect in capitalizing on that. And, that's why, Zohran Mamdani has had the success he's had.
I think what strategies can we use to engage the vote or engage young voters is Turning Point USA. I think more people could just get involved with Turning Point. If you're
possibly go to our event tonight,
if
or
you're
watch
in
it online.
Watch online.
Have your kids watch
online. I feel like this is Turning Point's needed now more than ever. So I feel like everybody can get involved, and that is a way that young voters can stay engaged, and that was what Charlie's main mission was all about.
Yeah. How about you, Cliff? You're always doing the get out the vote. You're probably speaking to a lot of youngish people. We've got about a minute and a half for you here. What have you been seeing?
Yeah, well, I'll echo Danny here. I mean, first and foremost, get involved with Turning Point. If there's a local chapter, join it. If there's not, start it. And listen, Turning Point is not just for students, right? I always have to explain to people, there's local chapters, there's faith chapters. You guys have chapters for pretty much any type of individual that's looking to get involved. So I just would really encourage you. You might be sitting there thinking, well, I like watching the show and I like the ideas. Get involved, right? The country needs you to step up and get involved with Turning Point and to take real action. Look, how do I think we reach young people? I think this election in 2024 really proved one thing, and that is that authenticity is what matters. And I think as Republicans, I'm going to be brutally honest, the rhinos, the establishment, some of these people that have been in this game for way too long, they're losing young people and all voters because people can sense they're not authentic. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, when you compared that to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, it was the greatest difference in authenticity. You might not like Trump, you might not like J.D., but when they're talking, they're saying what they believe. And when you compare that to the Democrat leaders, they're just not authentic. Now, my warning is Mamdani, because he is the one guy right now that when he talks, he sounds authentic. I don't know how much he believes what he's saying, but I think authenticity needs to be what we focus on. I'm going to continue to chase ballots and use whatever tactics at the door we need to win. But one, get involved at Turning Point if you want to make a difference. And two, the Republicans have a mandate to be the most authentic party and really to deliver for the American people. They do that, they're going to have great success.
That's right. Thank you, Cliff, so much for coming on. Again, get out and vote right now if you are in these states.
We truly are living in a historic time. After 738 days, the 20 living Israeli hostages have been released from captivity. And those who were killed will finally rest in peace near their loved ones. Praise God. In this time of celebration, our good friends at the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews send their deepest gratitude for your prayers and unwavering support. Thanks to you, the Fellowship has provided $300 million in emergency aid since October 7th, including millions in direct support for the hostages and their families. Of course, the road ahead is still a long one. Much needs to be done to restore and revive these victims of terrorism. But that's exactly what the Fellowship does. For example, they're assisting returned hostages, along with their families and friends, with immediate medical, psychological, and financial support. They're also providing mental health care for Israelis of all ages. To find out how you can help, visit ifcj.org. That's ifcj.org.